those ones be changed?
We do 1 a year.
1 a year, so we're 7 years out.
And you know
8
what?
years out.
And you look at some of these projects and they really affect each other. So when you're looking at, hey, I really think that beaver alignment would be the way to go, but we have 3 tunnels that are identified within that area. So some of these projects really paint you into a corner. And so we will actually pull away from some projects like rebuilding Meadow Road, because if we're putting a pathway, do we need to move the road to create room for the pathway? So a lot of these really tie to each other. And this particular group and the forethought of where the board has been like, hey, how do we look for long term? And also, how do we create these that will actually be beneficial versus something that will be redundant? So I think we're going to hold questions till the end. I was just kind of killing time until it was working.
Okay, and before I turn this over to our board treasurer, Clark Peterson, to talk a little bit about the funding, you know, as we work with the board and we work with staff and we work with, you know, creating our master plans, a lot of the reasons you're looking at all these projects and you're thinking, you're probably sitting there thinking, you know, oh, well, I like that one, or that one should be first. And then you see another one, you're like, well, maybe that one should be first, because that's what the comments show. Is these are designed, Sunriver is 58 years old as a community. Sunriver, going back 12, 13 years ago, Shark was built. You go back 5 years ago, the member pool was built. You're seeing Sunriver SRO Way upgrade its facilities. And the word that I'm going to use here is to keep Sunriver relevant in today's day and age. All of you live here. And when I say relevant, it has a lot of connotations under that. One is livability and attractiveness. You live here, you want to be able to use these facilities, so that's relevant for you living here. In terms of property values, and if you want to sell, move your house, our homes are our investment. It keeps Sunriver relevant in terms of being attractive for people, other people coming to Sunriver. So there's a lot of underlying reasons that all fit into that word relevant as to why we're considering these. And again, no more projects for you today, but we're going to get into some of how do you pay for all of these. So Clark, here you go.
My name is Clark Peterson. I'm a member of the board and also the chair of the finance committee. Oops, wrong direction. So some wonderful ideas here. They look beautiful, right? Maybe they need some tweaking. But the question is, how do we pay for it? You saw some pretty high price tags on those projects. So existing funding sources have been operating funds, but that operating funds largely just pay our salaries and running Sunriver. There's not a lot of money there for new capital items in our operating fund. Now, in our operating fund currently, we pay about $3.8 million of our dues money each year into the reserve fund. And part of that reserve fund is to continue to build the balance for replacing all the amenities, repairing, replacing things we already have, whether it be vehicles from Public Works and their other staff, the flooring and Shark, paint jobs, you know, all those things that make Sunriver what it is. And there is some money each year for new ideas. If we look back at the last several years, you could probably say there's about 500,000 to maybe 700,000 that can be used to try to accomplish some new things, but that doesn't go very far, as we saw in these estimates. The other alternatives beyond that is, do we do a voter special assessment to our dues? Do we identify 1 or 2 of these projects and say, okay, will we all be going to kick in $750 an owner and raise the money to do this and this? That's a possibility. It does require an owner vote. It requires 60%. Another outlet is possibly grants and opportunity funding. They're not easily available to Sunriver. When they look at our per capita incomes and what we're doing here, we don't normally qualify for a lot of grants that might be for low income and internet and this and that. So we look for them. We try to get them. You know, we replaced all the signage on the pathways. That was largely paid for by a grant, but they're not going to build us these kinds of facilities. So a subcommittee of the finance committee started last December and looking at what are some other revenue sources besides just increasing our maintenance fees. And they looked at several different ideas. And the best idea they came up with is for us to institute a capital transfer fee. And so that was approved by the finance committee and then later approved by the board. And we'll be looking at a vote for this in the fall, possibly the end of October through early November. And the suggestion was a monetary transfer. Upon a monetary transfer of ownership of a lot, you sell your home. The purchaser or the transferee shall pay a sum of 0.5% of that purchase price as a transfer fee going into a dedicated fund for just new capital. Doesn't go into wages, doesn't go into keeping our roads up. It goes into new capital only. So it's a new capital contribution. It's typical of a lot of large HOAs across the country, and that was one of the reasons we took a look at it. And some of them are based on a percentage of the value of the property sold. Some of them are based on some multiple of your annual dues. You pay 1 times your annual dues as an extra payment, or 1.5 or 2 times your annual dues or something. The committee felt it was fairest to base it on the value of the property sold, so that a 2-bedroom condo is not paying the same fee as a 6-bedroom home, because that also affects how people use Sunriver and use those amenities. It would only be when we're basically selling your house. If you're transferring it from joint names into a living trust, this doesn't apply. If you're transferring it to some other kind of entity, limited liability corporation or this or that, if the owners are also the primary shareholders or members of that new qualification, then you wouldn't pay this fee either. If you're transferring as a result of death into the executor's name or the personal representative's name, you're not paying this fee. If you're transferring it to the mortgagee as a result of foreclosure, it's not apply. And other similar non-monetary transfers, as they may be approved by the SRA Board of Directors at their discretion, it would not apply. So typically it'd be a sale of property, and it's an item that you'd normally ask the buyer to pay. But as we all know, in real estate transactions, everything's up for grabs, depending on who's got the most power, whether there's more sellers or more buyers, and who can make the other person pay. How much would it raise? Here's the number of properties sold the last 4.5 years in Sunriver. During COVID, we had some very large numbers there, 278 homes in 2021 and 183 in 2022. The last 2 full years, it's been in the 130s. And so far, year to date for June through June 30th, 83. If we assume that the average sale price is $1 million, obviously we have homes selling from $700,000 to $2 million. But if we set this as an assumption, $1 million per home, and 139 homes were sold, 0.5% is a $5,000 contribution into this fund, and that would raise $695,000. So if we have 140 homes sold at $1 million, we raise $700,000 a year. So year to date, we've had 83 sold, so we're a little above the average of the last 2 years, but who's to say in the next 6 months? So that gives us an idea. If we combine this 700,000 with some money coming out of the reserve fund and our yearly capital contribution, maybe come up with $1.2 million to do a project. Obviously, we can't do hardly more than one, but at least it's another source of revenue without having to raise dues. And we did get a letter from the board at our last meeting. Someone said, well, what about if we just raised our dues? To generate $700,000, we'd actually just raise our dues by $167 a year. Not a huge amount. However, that's an 8.44% increase in your dues. And then go to a vote of the people, as well as this fee will go to a vote of the owners. So I'm not sure. The question is, would you vote for an 8.4% increase? Or would you also be willing to vote for this transfer fee? We might also note that the resort and some of the business properties are limited in their increase to 4%. So they would not be subject to this increase if we did it as part of our maintenance dues. Instead of as a transfer tax. So that's my presentation.
Hey, Clark,
Yes,
and I have the truck. For the subcommittee that looked into this proposal. I mean, on first blush, I think it's great, you know. Did they look at different fees rather than a 0.5%, looking at 0.75% or 1%? And what are there like corollary with other developments that do similar thing and what the fees structure?
we looked at 15 different homeowner associations across the country, larger ones like ours. Some had less expensive homes than ours, but they were often several thousand properties like ours. And some of it was 0.25%, some of it was 1.5 times annual dues, which would be like around 3,000. And we settled on a half. We wanted it large enough that we wouldn't be coming back to you in 3 or 5 years and asking for more. We see this as something that we're gonna lock in, it's gonna be with us for a long time and generate funds over all of those years. But we didn't really consider above a half. And partly, we want to make it reasonable. And because the higher we get, the more opposition we may have.
Yeah, I get that. But you know, when you have realtor fees that are 6%, 0.5% is.
Not much.
You know, chicken feed compared to the other fees that you end up coming.
Maybe we were too conservative. Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions on that? You know, the one thing that as you're thinking about your questions, you know, as your general manager and working with our staff who's been here a long time and they've heard a lot of comments from the community, things, facilities they would like built, facilities you didn't think of 20 years ago as technology and needs and desires change, is there's a lot of brainstorming, there's a lot of design, there's a lot of listening to the community. What do you want your community to look like? But then at the end of the day, you know, sometimes I get the job of giving you the bad news is, well, we have to pay for these in some fashion. And then if we can't pay for them, we can't build them. So what we're trying to do, I think the biggest thing, if I add on to what Clark was saying, is trying to be creative in finding methods to fund some of these projects, but in a manner where it's being respectful of your current maintenance fees you pay, leaving those to operations as we talked about, as Clark talked about, and finding other methods that, let's say I'm a purchaser, new owner in Sunriver, if as part of the purchase of that property and the closing, they pay this fee, essentially that is their investment in the future of Sunriver. It's their investment into that relevancy that I was talking about. It's their investment that there could be these facilities that are constructed that add to their livability, add to their property value, and it's meeting, you know, their desire. So that's what I'm going to close with, what you heard today. But then I think also I was talking with Susan, we had some glitches here. I think we may go re-record this and that's what we'll post to our webpage, but we'll make sure we get your questions in there as well. Any other questions we can answer?
Will it be about my 60%?
Yes, it takes, the question was on the vote on this issue, does it take 60%? Yes, and it needs 60% affirmative before it would pass.
Of those who voted.
Of those who voted, yes, I'm sorry. 1,000 people vote, we need 601.
If you support it, be sure to be talking to your neighbors, so to explain what's being looked at.
So I agree with you. I think if you guys are gonna go through this, you should add a quarter point, just to, because to go back and do it again it will be a big job. So I'm asking this, I'm making a comment and a question, not being critical. I full support it. You need something relevant and improving our amenities. So I want to be clear. What I'm uncomfortable is, are these projects that you propose the highest and best use current? And I know you have multiple sources. Strategic plan, which I've gone through, it's not very specific, it talks about amenities. You've got master plans out there, you've got surveys over the years. And I just learned about new projects today, which thank you, other possibilities. Would the board consider creating a list and doing a survey? And because there's only very few owners here. And I think first off, it'll create awareness that there's a lot to do. And then I think you might get greater perspective on what the owners think is most important. And James, I know you're paid to do this. This is your job to assess this. The board is, responsible for this, but I don't feel currently that these 3 projects are the best. Now, they may do it for me, but I would encourage you to consider maybe a survey. I know surveys are a pain, but it would just validate this is what the owners want. And so just throw that out.
Yeah, the question was, the 3 projects we talked about as kind of the highest priority, are we sure those are the highest priority? That's the gist of what you're getting at. And are there other methods to evaluate or I guess validate that they are the 3 highest priorities? And again, I appreciate you understand we do owners comprehensive survey every 3 years. Park master plan, all of the plans that we've done, majority of those have included surveys. They've included public involvement. So those have been based upon exactly what you're saying. But again, I understand where you're coming from. Over time, things change. Is it relevant today? I think if we did a survey today and in 2 years, it would be different then.
I think that chances of success be much greater.
Well,
you got to get people to sign up.
Yeah, well, a couple things real quick, and then I can turn it over to Clark, is when we've done these in the past, one thing to keep in mind is Sunriver, the ownership in Sunriver is slightly less than 20% permanent residents. We have 40% second homeowners that really don't rent their home, and we have 40% owners that own homes, purely rentals. And so oftentimes, what we hear, you're here because you live here. And so you're here every day. But in terms of numbers, your number of permanent residents is far less than the rest of the owners. So sometimes we could do such a survey and it may turn out that those that don't live here, those that have a rental home, they're very much owners. Their voice is as important as everybody else. But, that may sway the survey. I don't know. I'm just kind of giving you the numbers.
It has to be surveyed. I mean, it has to represent.
It does, but I will also throw out there that sometimes when you do those surveys like that and you say, we're going to take the highest, the surveys, they're very accurate. Sometimes those turn into it's like a quasi vote. And people expect that, well, that was the highest in the survey, and that's what we need to build. And oftentimes those surveys are not, I'm not discounting the need to do surveys, we do them all the time, but sometimes when you do that specific survey, it's not based upon all the information. And so that becomes difficult that you did a survey, here's a vote, this is what everybody wants, but it's not taking into consideration of, so like the regional parks, we're trying to serve other sections of Sunriver to take pressure off facilities like Fort Rock Park. That's not considered. Pathway safety, that circle 2 to 3 path. So oftentimes I agree with you, surveys are valid, but it's not, you're not able to convey that information in the survey. That's why we're here today. If everyone was here, I would be 4,000 people, it'd be great to have that survey. So I agree with you, but there's more to it. Yes.
The other factor is this transfer fee. It's not tied to any specific project, not these ones we've shown today, or other ideas that we have. Those decisions will get made with more and more input from owners and boards, present board and future boards and that type of thing. So the idea is to keep Sunriver relevant by creating a fund to assist us in adding amenities over time. And the finance committee and the board too understand that we need more input from owners. In the end,
It's yours.
Yeah, and I would also say I honor boards, it's a big deal decision, but it doesn't feel to me like there's a balance, there's enough current data to prioritize, so enough said.
No, I guess maybe to address that in a different way is, and the reason why we continue to do the surveys and the plans is if I rewind 10 years ago, how many people thought we would have 16 pickleball courts in Sunriver?
18.
Or it's 18, 18 pickleball. We had none. I used to work in municipal government and I always laughed because we had a capital improvement plan for transportation improvements. And it was a 5-year capital improvement plan and it had dollars linked to it. And it was prioritized. Sometimes you go 7, 8, 9 years down the road, and there were things that were on that 5-year capital improvement plan that are still on there because there was continual evaluation of which projects really rise to the top. So it may seem like these are etched in stone. Those might be the top 3 right now. Maybe one gets built that is the priority. 2 or 3 years down the road, maybe something else pops up. And that's where I think, working with the staff and the surveys we do every 3 years and the other plans really get at your point. The reality is we have that time for adjustment because there's no way all those projects are going to get built in the next couple of years. So some of them are long term. So
Question about projects in the future?
yeah, any other specifics? Yes.
Well, because it came up earlier regarding the tunnel replacements. So specifically, the one that is over by the nature center that floods horribly and you can't walk through for days. Where is that in the schedule?
Well, I'll let Mark talk about it. It was scheduled last year, but for like that reason, we did the other one by Wildflower.
Wildflower was the worst. But actually, you know what? The one by Chucky's is pretty bad too. The one that did that floods. And so River Road, the one there is on the docket. The question comes, if you're looking, and again, I'll say, don't paint ourselves into a corner in some particular way. Let's say 2 to 3, we ended up getting all the easements and everything to get 2 to 3 done. We would use that 600,000 at that point in time to replace that tunnel, would be fitting into that project, maybe some road money because it's also a road project. And so looking at a $2 million project, you're taking some of those reserve monies that you had identified that would fall into that. So right now, I would say the number one priority is 2 to 3. If we don't get 2 to 3 done this year, we'll go to River Road. That's actually the next one that's slated. The concern with River Road, we need to do some engineering as there's a silt layer and we're having a geo failure on that. And so it actually drops and then you have to do a whole bunch of research. So I'm in the process right now of doing geotechnical evaluation of that particular site. But that one it's going to be one of those 2 in the next year.
There's some environmental.
Yeah, that one's got a lot of stuff going to it. It's going to be a challenge, but when we get it done, it's going to be awesome.
Well, if it isn't gonna be done in the next couple of years, is there anything from a maintenance point of view that can make it workable when it rains?
No, unfortunately. And we think about this because when it rains and snows and it melts and the water gets in there and refreezes, it's our guys out there with jackhammers taking the ice chunks out of the tunnels so they're usable. So we think about it, trust me. But that one is the one that we just replaced was horrible. And then the next one is River Road. So I'm anticipating it's either going to be 2 to 3 or River Road next year, but one of those 2. And then River Road would be the one following that. Yep.
Since you're up, this question has to do with the Cottonwood Regional Park.
Yes.
When you say sports courts, we should possibly make one of those tennis courts into 3 pickleball courts.
One thing, and we're talking about surveys and we're looking at particular projects. I think that once the project has been identified, then you really work with that community. You also look with your experts here and you talk about, hey, what does the community want? What does a regional park look like? And you start to balance those together. It wouldn't surprise me if there ends up being, some type of sport court that could either be basketball, could be pickleball, it could be different things that are there. Right now, it's just tennis, right? And tennis isn't isn't thriving. I think it's staying pretty steady. But those other things, and it doesn't really fit the need of a regional park where you just go to and you hang out and have fun with little playground, those kind of things. So I think you'd strongly look at that.
That's what I thought of,
Yeah.
because we're putting suggesting that you put a playground in, and so then you would have younger kids.
Yep.
Who maybe would be able to do pickleball, but not, no choice except tennis.
Right, we would definitely take a strong look at that. Also, you'd have a small playground, you'd have a restroom, you'd have a pavilion, you'd have something that would actually make it a really interesting place. And like I said, there's only 2 places in all of Sunriver that are capable of supporting that regional park. Luckily, they're in places that need it.
Well.
Yeah.
Say this, as you look at where the Cottonwood one is versus the Meadows one is more isolated because it's way out at a very edge.
Right.
So there's more houses around the.
And I think you follow the energy, but you also have to realize that we don't have a lot for those people in Meta. We don't have a lot of activities for them, and it'd be great. I mean, right now we have tennis and that's it. So being able to support that and several different layers and not just that one activity would be something to think about. But once the dog park went in, we actually put water lines ready to go for the bathroom. So that one actually has more energy associated with it. And I think the usage would be probably higher there, would be my guess.
Dog parks, well, you also mentioned though, as part of that, you use the word entrance to Cottonwood, which is one of the home titles as
Yep.
well. But would that possibly include the circle at north and south end and Cottonwood?
That's something to look at. That's not currently the plan. If we're looking at an interest experience that would be sooner.
Yeah.
And right now we have designs. I think you've actually seen the designs in the past. We have designs ready to go, and this is not a huge dollar cost compared to the projects we're looking at here, that we would actually be able to create that entrance experience. So, yep.
It's mostly just the downhill traffic coming in, it needs to be
Slowed down.
slowed down, which would be by Mr. Curve on the
Right.
left side half of it, but.
Yeah, even
South
even
side.
if you just have a rock monument with Sunriver logo that's in there, that almost like a gateway experience when you're coming through. And then you have guardrails that are associated, so it feels like you're in more of a controlled area, starts to what they call calming influences for speed, that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Any other questions for maybe somebody else? Okay.
Thank you. Just kind of going forward, there's no shortage of ideas. And your staff, your finance committee, your board is trying to be creative to find ways to pay for these things, to bring them online sooner rather than later, rather than having to wait. And again, getting to the point, how do we prioritize these? There's going to be future meetings like this. Like I said, this is going to be available for viewing on our webpage. I'm going to work with Susan to send out an email blast that has a link in that email. You can click and it'll take you to the video so we can get people to watch it and comment. Because the only way that the board truly knows, what do you want to move forward is to hear from the owners. And without hearing from the owners, I've been doing this for a long time. What happens is something gets built and somebody says, why did you do that? And it's like, well, we had opportunities for everybody to comment. So it's really important. It's very, very, very important. So I'll kind of leave it at that. The other thing is our board is going to, just to let you know how they get in depth, on September 17th, prior to the regular board meeting, they're going to have a special board meeting where they talk about capital projects. What do they want to fund in the budget for 2026 based upon some of this input? And then their 2026 work plan. What other things do they want staff to work on, like our pathway safety task force that we had. And so again, that's September 17th. It's a special meeting. It's open for folks that want to come. It'll be more of like a work session like we have on our Fridays with the board. But again, it's continual work. It's continual discussion. So, okay.
On the plans for the living room, the bifold doors dividing the two rooms,
Mhm.
are those solid doors or is that too much into the weeds to know?
I think the original plan was for those to be glass doors, but then have blinds on them, so you can pull the blinds down.
Okay.
So you can shut it off for an actual
My
week.
concerns about if we were to lose the crescent room, which I see as the community room, because that's where the community groups meet. For example, one of the things that happens in there is a silent meditation. That needs a little more privacy, like the crescent room has.
Right.
Than glass doors,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, they would have blind options on them.
And sometimes people show, movies, in there, like beginning of ski season or something, and ski group, you know, shows movies, and I didn't see anywhere where, you know, there was a screen or something.
Yeah, we haven't gone that, we're basically, it's kind of more the floor plan of the structural, so we haven't gotten into the furniture, tables, you know, those types of things yet. But the intent of that was the use of the living room is getting more and more crowded. So it's so that if you needed more space, you could open those doors and you could use both spaces. But so you could close the door, pull the blinds, it would be relatively soundproof, so it could be a private meeting.
Yes.
So that was the intent.
We would also have it set up to where we would have audio video capabilities in there too. So if you wanted to show something.
So you would have, like you have in the Crescent.
Separate that into two rooms. So you could have sort
The
of
smaller.
half of
Yeah,
space
half
and
that, yeah.
40% of the space
Yeah.
or something for a smaller purpose. That's really good.
That's a good possibility.
Multi-function.
And I would add, to this comment about surveying. That was on the tip of my tongue to suggest the possibility of a survey, and I understand what you were saying too. If you were to do it, you'd have to have almost like this presentation.
Mhm.
You know, to go along with, you know, you might want to limit it to your top three and see how they came out. But you'd have to have a lot of background. So that people could make
Mhm.
good answers, but you do get buy-in now.
You do, you're right. You know, but I've been here 5.5 years. My experience is you get, like on our owner surveys that we do every 3 years. I've been here for 2 of them. You get, you know, there's a lot of, we ask information. Are you a permanent resident? Are you part-time resident? Are you just own rental property? And the answers, the crosstabs that you get for those are drastically different. They're a different input as to whether you live here or whether you just own a rental property. So that's the thing, that to do a survey, you don't want that element to skew the survey in something like this.
So I some questions, just like we do on every 3 years.
You know,
So that at least you have it by that group, and then, you know, they don't have to worry about speaking against the group, but.
You know, I'll just be jumping ahead, but not to beleaguer this, is I would guess, and I'm saying an educated guess, that if you surveyed all of the owners that have rental property, they're going to look at things that enhance their ability to rent their property. They would say, oh, we need something, and it's been identified in our master plans, for the shoulder season in the winter, so I can rent more nights in the winter. Some of the permanent residents are going to say, that might not be our top of our list. We really like some improvements to the living room. And that is what sometimes you don't want that survey to do. Anything else? Going once? I used to do auctions, going twice. Sold. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're out how to turn this on.